Way back to a time when the world spun a little slower, stars shone a little brighter, and if you had something smart to say, people didn't just retweet you, they actually listened. In the year of our Lord, well, not quite, in the year 1201 AD, in the city of Tus, nestled in the Persian lands, a boy named Nasiruddin al-Tusi was born. Now this boy wasn't like the others. No sir, while other boys chased goats or fought imaginary dragons with sticks, young Nasir chased numbers, stars, and ideas, and not necessarily in that order. His father, a religious man, hoped the boy would become a preacher or a scholar of the holy word, something noble, respectable, and above all, predictable. But Nasiruddin was a different breed of cat. He looked up at the heavens and thought, now, who's running all that? And why is Jupiter always late to supper? You see, Nasir had what some folks might call a restless curiosity. The kind that doesn't leave a man alone until he figures out how the moon dances and what music the spheres hum at midnight. Nasir didn't waste much time. He gobbled up books like a Mississippi hound in a butcher shop. Theology, logic, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, you name it. And let me tell you, if there was a formula to be found or a truth to be uncovered, Nasir was already halfway there before the ink dried. But history, like weather, has a cruel habit of changing without warning. Along came the Mongols, sweeping through the east like a dust storm through a barn. Cities fell, libraries burned, and scholars ran for the hills. Now here's where things get real curious. Instead of chopping off his head like they did with other clever men, the Mongol ruler, Hulagu Khan, saw something in this bearded, book-loving Persian. Maybe it was wisdom, maybe it was wizardry, or maybe Hulagu just needed someone to tell him where Mars would be next Thursday. So he kept Nasir close, and even, would you believe it, let him build a grand observatory on a mountaintop in Maraga. Gave him books, instruments, assistants, and enough parchment to wallpaper every house from Baghdad to Byzantium. What Nasir built in Maraga was nothing short of miraculous. It wasn't just an observatory, it was a temple of reason. A place where men from all over the Islamic world came to measure stars, chart planets, and argue over the size of the heavens. Nasiruddin and his merry band of scholars recorded the positions of heavenly bodies with such precision it would make a modern GPS blush. He wrote a mighty book, Zich-i-Ilkhani, a star catalogue that became the gold standard long before Europe had its renaissance. But that's not all. He invented a neat little trick called the Tusi couple, a clever piece of geometry that explained how circular motions could produce linear ones. It might not sound like much, but centuries later, a certain Mr. Copernicus would take a long, hard look at it, and perhaps whisper, "Thanks, old friend." But you'd be wrong to think old Nasiruddin only had stars in his eyes. He was a philosopher, a logician, an ethicist, and a man who knew how to build a moral argument as finely as he could plot a comet. He penned Akhlaqi Nasiri, a book on ethics and politics that made more sense than most kings ever did. He believed in reason, in justice, and in the power of a well-balanced life, things we still haven't quite figured out in modern times. In 1274, Nasiruddin took his final journey, not on camelback, but into the very stars he spent his life chasing. But mark my words, his light never went out. His observatory in Maraga inspired others, perhaps even the great Tycho Brahe and Kepler in Europe. His books were translated, studied, passed around like sacred treasure. And his name? It still circles the heavens, etched into a crater on the moon and an asteroid floating in the dark. Now folks like to say the sky's the limit. But Nasiruddin al-Tusi didn't believe in limits. He believed in possibilities, in questioning, in exploring, in calculating the universe down to the very last arc second. He lived in a time of swords and silence, but he made it a time of science and wonder. And that, my friend, is the tale of the boy from Tus who reached for the stars and touched them with ink-stained hands.